Hey, it's Jessica Honegger, founder of the socially conscious fashion brand Noonday Collection. Welcome to the Going Scared podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Michelle McKinney. Michelle defines herself as a dream architect, and her goal is to help women design, construct, and bring their dreams to life. She's also a fellow adoptive mom. She recently adopted her daughter from Ethiopia a few years ago, and I loved getting to hear her family's stories. Michelle is all about helping people to push past fear, to see and create a bolder vision for themselves and their work by sparking ideas and lighting those inner fires that are simmered deep down. I learned a lot from our interview, and I think you're going to be encouraged to really define your dreams, write it down, and then also find a dream defender, those people who can surround you when maybe other people don't quite get why that's a dream of yours. Her conversation today gave me a lot of courage. She's right in the middle of going scared, so I can't wait for you to dive in and hear our conversation. All right, Michelle, welcome to today's podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
Okay, it's hilarious because I feel like we get to know each other at conferences and doing podcasts together. Today I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get to catch up with Michelle today by doing a podcast with her for thousands of people to listen to.
Yay! I love it. I love it. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Okay. So Michelle recently spoke at Noonday Collection's annual sales conference / it's basically like a global summit. And you brought the house down, girl. You tied a bow. You landed the plane. It was so good. But I realized today as I was getting ready for this interview that I actually haven't heard your whole story. I don't even know where you grew up. So I kind of wanted you to give the Reader's Digest version of kind of how you got to where you are right now.
Absolutely. So just in terms of even childhood, if we just for a smidge go there, I was born in Southeast DC, Washington, DC, and my mom passed away when I was turning 5. And so she didn't have a will, never thought that at 30 that would be her situation. And so my brother and I ended up getting split up. And so we lived in 2 different households of family members. And so for me, I just grew up, I think, a lot faster just because I had this sense of independence for whatever reasons. Nobody told me to take it, but I just felt like I had a sense of responsibility to be able to live a life where I didn't have to be a burden to other people. And so I think throughout my childhood and going into high school and then into college, it took me a while to find my path. And it was so frustrating because I remember being in my freshman year of school, actually, no, my second year of school. I was in New York with my girlfriends. We were on the subway, and one of my girlfriends, who I'm still really close with now, she was like, so what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. I think I'm about to try XYZ. And I was known for always trying something different. And so she was like, you are just so wish-washy. And when she said it, I took major offense to it. I was like so hurt and so sad. It wasn't that wasn't her intention, but I just felt like, well, dang, I want to be like one of these people that's really certain about what they want to do in life, but that just was not my path. And so it's interesting to see how the life that we live early on ends up catching up to what our path is. And so if I think about that 19-year-old girl, young lady who was on that subway, in that subway that day, feeling like, dag, it kind of sucks that I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life. And that here I am, this is what I'm doing, helping women to discover what are you supposed to be doing with the life that you've been given. It's just so freaking full circle, and I love it.
That is so powerful.
Thank you.
Moment when you were 19 and you're feeling insecure about that comment,
Majorly.
Actually it was like a prophetic calling. It was almost like calling you to what you're supposed to do. And so tell me, you are all about pouring into women. Was that a deficit in your life with your mom having passed away at such a when you were so young, or did you have some other woman that poured into you?
Right. I think I don't know. I had a lot of women that poured into me. And I think the initial place that it started was thinking about my grandmother. And my grandmother, just like in a lot of families, my grandmother was the pillar of the family. She was taking care of everybody. And the challenge that I saw, even after she passed away, was that she took care of everybody so well. But the one person she didn't take care of was herself. And so she lived, I think, a very intentional life in terms of her faith. But in terms of her putting herself first, I just didn't see her doing enough for that. And then as I got older and I saw that same theme being brought forward by other women in my family and by friends who, served so well, but the one person that they forgot to serve or felt like they didn't have permission to serve because they felt guilty about it was themselves. And I was like, well, wait a minute. We have dreams too. We have desires. We have things that we want to do. It's great to cheerlead everybody else, but who's going to be your cheerleader? And so that's where I think that it started stirring up in me that, what, this is a problem that exists that I feel like I really have a strong burden for. I want to be able to take that passion, that burden, and the gifts that I have, and I want to do something about it. And so that's, I think, the beginnings of that rumbling in my heart that it was like, something needs to shift and I need to figure out some sort of platform or something to be able to support women.
Okay. Now, also, what I know about you is that you have several children, one of
Hi.
whom you adopted from Ethiopia,
Yeah.
which is a huge, I'm an adoptive mom as well, and it's a
Yes.
huge part of our company DNA. So tell us a little bit more about your family life and your little girl from
Yeah.
Ethiopia.
So I think I am the person, probably like other people, who I think God, just like in his own sense of humor, is just like, what, I'm just gonna make this is gonna be real funny to me. Because growing up, I didn't have that thing where it's just like, I want to have a family and we're gonna do this. That just was not what my personal dream was. I knew that I wanted to get married and I knew I wanted to have a dog. Children were never in the equation for me. And honestly, I was thinking about this a few months back, and I believe the reason why children were in the equation was because there was so much fear tied into the death of my mom and all of the separation that happened with my brother and I, that I just didn't even allow that to be part of what my life could be. And so when my husband and I, we got married, we initially talked about adoption. My husband, we've been married 20 years in April. And so we initially talked about adoption, but we had got to a place where our kids, they were like, I call it at that age where they can make their own bowl of cereal. And for me, on a
Right?
Saturday morning, when your kids can get up and not
That's
like, oh
everything.
my gosh, you know how major that is? So the whole idea of adoption just like went like to the wayside. It wasn't even in my thought process anymore because I'm like, these kids can get up and they can do their own thing. And so eventually my heart started stirring again. I think one of the first families that I saw was Carlos and Heather Whitaker, where they were sharing online their journey to adopting their son, I think from Korea, I think it was at the time. And I was like, oh, that's so nice for the people. And as I was watching them, then I saw Steve and Danae Lehman, I think, were the next couple that I saw, and they had actually adopted from Ethiopia. And during that time, God was doing some working in my heart, and I was actually off from work. And crazy as it is, it seems like for me personally, whenever God has wanted to say something significant to me that's going to make me create some sort of major shift, I often get hurt at work. Do not ask why, other than that's all I can think is because I'm so busy doing stuff that I don't create time to be still. And so it's been crazy that during those seasons where there's almost forced stillness, that this shift comes. And during that same season, I remember hearing about their stories and thought that was nice for them. And having this peace in my heart. And I was writing a blog post one day, and I know this is so not a bucket list thing, but this is just when it happened. I remember writing and typing on my keyboard, one day I'd like to adopt a child from internationally. And as soon as I finished that Y on internationally, my fingers popped back off of the keyboard. It was like, where did that come from? But then it was like, that's not going to happen because my husband and I, we are so resolved in our family and what we're going to do. And so if this is supposed to happen, God, you're going to do something with him because he's already going to say no. Well, of course, for me, I felt like God went ahead of me. And by the time I presented to my husband, he was like, yeah, let's go do it. So it was just like sort of this moment was like, I cannot believe this. So the humor in it was that I went from this person that didn't have an interest, or I didn't feel like I was that, I guess, mother, so to speak. And again, it could have been because of my own brokenness, in that I went from that space to getting married to a person that already had a child. So we were going to be instantly a blended family, and then having two sons biologically, and then also introducing adoption to our family. So that to me is the irony of it all, that I am that person that was like, not me. I'm not going to be, a mom. And to be able to be in this place and see motherhood in so many different ways has been it just blows me away.
Wow. It's so cool too that you were able to now connect that really you weren't wanting to be a mom because of fear, because it brought up so much fear about your own experience.
Absolutely.
And as you look back over like your 20s, your 30s, when you think about the times when you've really gone scared, when you realize I was afraid, but you know what? I've stood up and I've gone anyway. What are some of those times that come to mind?
Oh my gosh. So I think there have been so many moments, but if I go right back to the whole adoption, because, when we think about going scared, I remember being at church and one of the pastors that was there, he was like, you just got to be scared and do it anyway. Because the fear for me was a lot of different things at the time when we were going down the path of adoption, is that when we made the decision, I thought, just because I thought that when we were going to share it with our family, I thought they were going to be really excited in the same way that they were excited when I said I was pregnant with my two sons, but it wasn't that way just because of miseducation and their own fears also. And so we did not have the support of anybody. It was literally my husband and me, and that was it. And it wasn't until I actually reached out to another couple, Daniel and Sarah Du Bois, who are in Tennessee, because they had shared, again, that's the great thing about the internet. There are some not so great things, but then there's some amazing things where you can create these awesome pieces of community. And so I reached out to them because they had shared how they had fully funded their adoption. And we needed that because we didn't have, a check to be able to write out $28,000, which is what it was at the time. And so I reached out to them. They said, hey, give us your Skype information and let's do a call. They did with my husband and I, and they were able to share how their family had projected their own fears onto them, but how they pushed anyway, and they encouraged us to push anyway. And so down the road, I think it was like 2 weeks later, with no ask of our own, a letter popped up in the mail, and it was from their family, and it was a check on the inside of it. And the check literally was the amount that we were going to need to be able to start our application process. And so our community started out so daggone small. It was us and them. And the them was really just being able to have somebody to just be in it, in the trenches with you. And it began to grow. And so the scary part of it was not having anybody to go with us. The scary part of it was not having the resources to make it happen. And the other scary part of it, and this may seem so odd, because when you are a Black family that's adopting from Africa, it might seem that it's an easier connection, right? But the challenge becomes is that sometimes in the African American culture, there has been some tension between Africa and African Americans on both sides in terms of misconceptions of one another. And so our family here in the States, they had their hangups. And so I didn't expect any of that. So it was scary because some of the comments that we got at the time. And so that was a piece for us that was like, you know what, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to go scared. And for us, scared didn't mean that it was going to be like 6 months or 8 months or a year. Our scare was going scared for 4 full years before we actually got matched with our daughter.
And so how have you navigated that? Because you bring up this point about you're an African American with an African American family, obviously, and then you adopt an African child. Have you navigated that cultural difference differently? Or, yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is the thing. The fear was on the other side of it. All of the fear that people were projecting onto us, it was on the other side of it. So, what I had to do during that time was I had to not focus on the people who were not going to be on the journey with us and focus solely on the people that were like, we are Team McKinney during that time, right? And so what happened was that as Team McKinney began to grow and people saw that we were in it for the long haul, some of those exact same people to this day are people who love, I mean, immensely love my daughter, who spend so much
Wow.
time, who do all those things. And it's been awesome because it has also allowed us to be able to grow our education around the African culture, not just for us, but for them also. And so I think when you're in that period and you're trying to navigate, being scared and being afraid and all those kinds of things, you have to focus on what you have, not on who you don't and what you don't have. Because if you feed the what you don't have, then you're going to stay scared and not make any movement. If you focus instead on what you do have, who's on your team, even if it's one person, even if that one person is just you right now, that's how you're able to navigate that. And so, as I said, as we push through that, now the openness of the hearts, has been amazing that people are learning about culture and not just about culture, but their culture. So that has been really, really interesting and so phenomenal for all of us.
Wow. I mean, I can't think of something more courageous than sticking with a decision and staying true to it, even when your family is not on board, even for 4 years. But that's so
Hmm.
powerful that you built a team around you. And so
Hmm.
let's seg a little bit to that because
Yeah.
now you call yourself a dream architect. And so
Yeah.
your goal is to help women design, construct, and bring their dreams to life. And if you could
Yes.
apply that adoption journey
Hmm.
to even how you teach women now, I just
Hmm.
see so much connection there because I think when women are starting something, especially with social media, which you and I have talked
Hmm.
about this,
Hmm.
we are surrounded now with images or with other women that it's so easy just to constantly compare and therefore to
Hmm.
focus on what we don't have.
You said it perfectly. Literally, when you said just before you said that, I just wrote on my little paper right here is focus on what do you have in your hand? What is it that you possess? And the thing is, we've talked, I think this has been all over social media, different places, is that we do this comparison where we compare our behind the scenes to somebody else's highlight reel. I think Steve Furtick said it. And it's so true. And we forget that we're in day one of something and somebody else is in day 5,223. And so we get so afraid of, one failure, which we have to understand that failure is really a passport to your journey, that you have to get that stamp, that failure stamp in your passport to success. It's impossible. Every person that I know, every business owner, every community leader, anybody in my life that I have known or either read about, they have had some sort of failure in their life. And it's interesting. I was literally just on a call with somebody before this one, and I was encouraging him to fail fast. It's something that we hear often, right? And the thing is, if you stop the process of failure, let's say if after failure, number 6, that's where the gold is, right? But if you never make failure 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll never get to that. But the thing is, you cannot avoid it. And so, unfortunately, what we do is we end up we don't see the other person's failures. And so all we see are the wins and the successes and all that. And so because that's the only part that they are choosing to show us, right? We start to think that something is wrong with us because the failures are happening, and we know them because they're ours. So we have to be mindful of that what we're looking at, and sometimes you got to turn it off. I love social media and I think it's a great tool, but sometimes I know that you've done this also, is that sometimes you take a little break on the weekends. You have to unplug and disengage to tap back into the reality of your life.
And I think for those of us that are engaging on social, we need to rise up and show the messiness of the process.
Yes.
Because you know what? This was going on long before social. We got to take our kids to Italy this summer, and we were in Florence, and our tour guide, we were standing in front of the statue of David, and our tour guide tells us that Michelangelo, on the week he died, asked all of his assistants to tear up everything of his that wasn't a masterpiece.
Whoa.
Because he only wanted people to see what ended up, landing in these museums. And
wow.
Imagine how much we've lost, of not getting to have that history or seeing the process of Michelangelo. Like, no one was able to grow from his process because of that.
Wow.
And so it is our tendency, I think, if we let perfectionism stay in the driver's seat and not let other people into our mess. So it's both, and it's turning off the comparison. It's not comparing ourselves. Yeah. But then it's also for those of us that are engaging, just like, how can we show people the messiness in the middle of the process? Which brings me to my next question, Michelle, because you are at the beginning of something. You announced this at Shine.
Yes! That's why you guys got it first.
We did. I was like, this girl's got so much guts, and I love it. You left your corporate job at Starbucks to recently launch your own gig. So tell us about that.
Yes, it was scary. That was my next going scare moment. Because the scary part about all of that is that, first of all, Starbucks was a dream job, literally a dream job. I'm not even saying it, just kind of using the word. Starbucks was a dream job for me. One, you don't easily get into Starbucks in terms of operations. And the opportunity that I had, I felt like it was an opportunity of a lifetime. I was the executive assistant for the regional vice president for the Mid-Atlantic area. And so and I say we because she included me in the we, and we oversaw a portfolio of about 640 stores. And so there was a lot there. And I say that Starbucks was the job that grew me the most. It was hard. It was so challenging. And so I could tell, though, at the same time that I was nearing the end of my assignment. And what I mean by that is that I often tell my clients that I don't consider anything to just be just a job. I feel like everything is something that we are called to, right? And called meaning you're supposed to do two things while you're there. And until you complete both of those things, it's not time for the next assignment. You can always leave, early, but you won't have completed the assignment, and you're going to have to learn it all over again, right? In some capacity. And the two things are, you are there to pour into other people. And sometimes you can be sent just to pour into one person, right? Just one person that's there, but you're supposed to pour everything out into the organization. But then you're also there to be poured into and to be stretched and to learn and to be a sponge, right? And I could tell that my assignment was ending because I began to grow restless. And in terms of the talent and the skill set that I had in that specific job, not in all the organization, but in the specific job that I had, I could tell that I was only using, I felt like, 15% or maybe 20% of where I was really gifted. And for me, I knew I didn't want to relocate to Seattle. I knew that I didn't want to be a district manager, a store manager, or a regional director. I knew that was not my path. And so I knew that it was time. But the hard thing was, there are sometimes that we can be very locked into the things that we have. And, whenever you say, for me, people say, well, where do you work? And you say Starbucks and operations, right? It breeds a conversation of, oh my gosh, tell me more, because the brand is so strong, right? So there was the association with that. There was the nice paycheck, and having a paycheck every 2 weeks that I can count on. There was the incredible 401k options. There was the stock that we were given. There was the free Spotify. There's the free pounds of coffee and tea every single week. There were a lineup of things that the company is just so generous with in terms of its partners. And so it was like, I feel this unrest, and I feel that something greater is calling me, but I'm so tethered to this that's here. And so it literally was right at the point, and I am not exaggerating, when you invited me to be at Shine. That was when the light bulb really went off for me that said, you can do this, Michelle. you can do this. It is time for you to leave what you've known. And I know that you've gotten out the boat before and you've been in deep waters, but now it's time to be in even deeper waters. And it's interesting because one of my clients, I felt like I had been stirring my heart around it. And one night we were at a group coaching session that I facilitated. And you have those girlfriends, and she's a girlfriend slash client, and you have those girlfriends who just say something that only they can say it in the way that they say it. And she said to me, I'm saying, Michelle, if you want to unleash other women, you need to get unleashed yourself.
Whoa.
And I was
like, whoa, bring it.
So I kind of looked at her because it wasn't a new word that I'd heard. It's something I felt like God had been stirring in my heart, but I was just so afraid of it, right? And I was beginning to settle for the known. And so when she said it, of course, I got to side eye her first because, she just kind of read me a little bit. And she's so sweet. Her name is Maddie, and she's so sweet with everything. But I knew that she was speaking truth. And that's a thing is that it's so important that you don't have just people around you that are just kind of like, if people say your amen sort of corner, but you need people in your life that will call you to higher ground and call you out when they know you are settling for less than what you are capable of. And so it was literally because the conference was happening and I knew I had to take off work to do it, that it was like, you know what? And we had a major event happening, and I was going to need to take off during this major event that I was leading.
Wow.
And so I knew that the only way for me not to be at this part of the meeting was for me to go ahead and put my resignation in.
Wow.
And so that's the part that you did not know. So it became a thing where I knew that I wanted to be at the conference Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But my meeting was going to take place on Friday, and I needed to be present to lead my part. And so I was like, you know what? I talked to my husband. I did talk to him. I think there was some questioning in the audience about whether or not I told my husband. I did tell my husband. We had talked about it, and he supported it. And so I went in, kind of, talked to my boss, held my breath for a minute, and I shared it with her. And the great thing was that it was bittersweet in that we had been having some conversations before, and she's an incredible, incredible leader. And so while it was hard for her to let go, because she's a dreamer and a doer also, she knew that it was my time. And so I had her support, I had my family support, but that didn't mean that it was any less scary.
Right. Well, and honestly, the part that spoke to me so much was the response of your boss, because I have an EA. I know what I would do if she told me she was leaving. I mean, you don't want to let go. That's been something that's really hard for me, being kind of a CEO, is when people that day when they walk in and they're like, this isn't my place anymore. And it's so hard, but you ended so well. And I think that a lot of young women or just professionals in general, we don't think about endings. Like we think about beginnings and how important it is to begin, but you ended well.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think there's a book by, I think it might be Henry Cloud, that's called Necessary Endings. And so if anybody ever has a challenge with, when it's time to make those endings, I think it gives you some great prep in there about, when it's time and how to do that.
I just ordered it last week.
You did?
I did. I don't like endings. I do not like endings. I think endings, they involve grief and letting go. And I'm not real like that. I'm just like, let's just all just stay one happy party forever and ever. Like no goodbyes ever.
It's tough. And in fact, just before Starbucks, that was where I had my biggest lesson about necessary endings. I was actually working at my church for 5 years. And so it was, where ministry and work were all together in one pot. And just like Starbucks, I could feel where the unrest was coming, but I loved the people so, so much, but I knew it was time. And I remember sitting in my office one day and I was so frustrated, and I knew, it was time to make a decision. And I had this yellow pad, because I used to write on yellow pads all the time. And I simply wrote, as if it was just God inspired, I am the dream giver. I'll give you a new dream. And when I got that helped me so much, because Just like you said, I thought working at my church, just like Starbucks, I said was a dream job. I was like, this is the end all be all of it all. I'm going to be here forever. And what I had to realize was that that was never the promise. The promise was never that I was supposed to be there forever. I was supposed to go there, pour in, get poured into, and then get ready for the next assignment, and then move out the way for the person that's supposed to come after me, because then that becomes their dream.
I love that. And I love this idea of assignments, because I think we hear this word calling and it feels kind of narrow. It feels like, oh my gosh, I'm just supposed to find this one thing and that's what I do for the rest of my life.
Yes.
But really, calling is more kind of finding like those internal stories that, just like your subway moment, right?
Yeah.
Your calling was to help other people unleash their dreams. And you've been able to do that while working at your church, while working at Starbucks, and now in a more global way by having your own company.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that was the call. But the assignments can change.
Oh my gosh. And that's the thing, in coaching and clarity coaching sessions that I do, that's one of the biggest things I'm having to help women to dismantle, is because there's this misnomer that, you are here for one thing, and it's not. It's really a package of things, right? And so for a season of my life, for 20 years, I was, on assignment, called to be an executive assistant to some incredible leaders along the way, where the thing that I was really great at was helping them to figure out how to achieve what it was that they wanted, how to achieve their dreams within the business, right? But then also how to balance as much as you can balance, because there really isn't true balance, but how to be able to engage properly home and work. And so I did that for 20 years. Well, it came to a time that season was over. This is the thing. It's sort of like when you go into the grocery store, they always say the really good food is along the border, right? That's where all the living stuff is. All the manufactured processed stuff, while I really enjoy it, right? That's the stuff that's in the core. The things that are living, they have an expiration date. They are not going to last forever. And so sometimes, we think that we have all of our lives to do this thing that we have a burden for. No, it's for a specific period of time, because there is a appointed period of time where people have this burning need, this burning desire to have this problem fulfilled and to be resolved. You have the answer. So it's your duty, while the burden is there in you, it's your duty to act now. It's sort of like a friend of mine, she talks about, she's in video production, and, when director says cue, you got to move at cue. You can't wait until you feel like it, because if you wait until you feel like it, you mess everybody else up. So when life says cue, it's time to go, which means that just like that actor or that actress, prior to cue, what did you have to do? You had to be preparing for the moment of your cue. And so if right now your heart is stirring, you don't know what it is that you're supposed to be doing, right? What is the next best thing that you can do? What one step can you make right now? What's the one thing? You don't have to think globally and make it bigger than what it is. No, if you have a desire to be able to help people, help young kids read, go to the library. Volunteer, go to the local school. You don't have to create something huge and humongous. Whatever it is, just go do that thing. And then once you do that thing, then the doors will open for all the other things. But you have to just start. You got to start.
And you know what? You have to know you matter. Because if you're an actor who's showing up and the director says cue, if you don't show up, you're messing everybody's lines up.
You sure are.
So you've got to know that you matter. And when women and men can understand my presence, it matters. My presence matters to reading to little kids.
That's right.
Or whatever it might be. We've got to know that we matter. And that is what enables us to show up.
And I'll just say this last thing about it. For me, is that I think what happens, Jessica, is that we look at women like you, right? And so you're probably looking at somebody else, but let's just still say somebody is looking at you, and it's like, oh my gosh, Jessica is running this incredible company, and she has all these things going on, and she's being invited to speak. She's she's an author, and all these kinds of things. And so remember, you were talking earlier about the whole comparison piece. Is that woman begins to compare herself to you and feels like, you know what, I'm not as great as her. I only have XYZ. But yet again, you're comparing where Jessica is now at day 10,233. You weren't with Jessica at the beginning of this when she had a few pieces of jewelry and was trying to figure out how to pay for her adoption. She was in the same seat as you are right now. And the only difference is that you made a decision to just start, and you understood that what you were doing, that it mattered, exactly what you're saying, and that you mattered.
Well, and I love the image of this grocery store. Like, I can imagine my grocery store right now and all the beautiful fruit section, and then I can imagine it all rotting.
Yes!
Imagine a grocery store filled with rotting fruit.
Oh my gosh.
And that's what we do when we don't show up, you know?
So true.
And we don't understand that we matter.
So true. So
okay.
true.
So have you had your last day at Starbucks?
I did. I am actually in week 2 right now.
Week 2. Okay, so tell us what it's been like, week 2. Entrepreneur. How's it going? New entrepreneur.
Well, as you know, just so wonderful and sexy, right? Not.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say this, what I did do in week 1 that was not in my plan was, and I posted about it today. I actually posted about the messiness of marriage. My husband and I, our journey in the past 20 years. And last week, although I had a plan of what to do, I spent time with my husband, because for all of these years, he has taken, a supportive role in a lot of cheerleading things that I've done. And so it was such a great foundational piece to help me to remember, as I'm walking through this journey, to keep pouring into the people who are right here with me, because that was part of the reason why I needed to make this transition, because the space that I was in, it really didn't allow for it in the way that I desired it. And so week 2 now has been back to foundational things. I did set my schedule in terms of, creating some batching stuff and, how it would work. And so this week so far, like today, I was on the phone with my attorney and doing things like that, finishing up all my trademark stuff that I hadn't done before. And so it's been a lot of those sort of foundational operational pieces. And then the last piece was hiring my marketing and business coach, because I needed one. I think we all need a coach in our life to help us when we're trying to go to higher levels. And so it's been those kinds of things. And so now I'm at the point where it's like, okay, what is the profitability plan going to be? And what is this, what are my projections going to be for the next 30, 60, 90 days out?
That's awesome. I mean, you're getting right to it. I mean, you can't be a dreamer without having some sort of planning.
You sure do. Otherwise,
you'll
just be dreaming. You will not be unleashed, and we want to be unleashed.
You gotta unleash.
Gotta unleash.
Unleash the dreams. That's right. The goal here. That's the goal. Right. So let's just close out with, what are some practical tools that we can all use to help us develop a vision for our lives and sort of discovering our assignments?
Yeah. So whenever I meet with clients, one of the things if we start from the even very beginning, and I have a woman that's kind of like, I kind of don't know what I want to do. We go to this thing that I've created where, if you could imagine 3 circles that kind of touch, to create this one place where all 3 of them touch together. I forgot what it's called, but just imagine those 3 circles. And one of those represents your gifts. And so the first question would be, ask yourself, what gifts do I have? What is it that I possess that I am exceptionally great at? And this is not the time, as I tell people, to be Kendrick Lamar and humble. This is the time to be more of Sasha Fierce and to pop your collar and be like, you know what? I do this better than most people. And if you're a person and you can't figure that out, I challenge my clients. They have to come back. They have to ask at least a minimum of 10 people in their circles, in their professional and personal spaces, to ask them, what is it that I do exceptionally well, better than others. The second question is, what am I passionate about, whether it be a people group or a cause that I would give my time, my money in a sacrificial way? What is the thing that just kind of fires me up, whether it's women, children, men, families, injustice, the justice system, the politics, whatever it is. What is the thing that you're most passionate about? And then last question to ask yourself is, what problems or needs exist in the world that I would love to be able to help solve using my gifts? And so while those are three questions that you ask, what I challenge people to do is to get crafty with creating something that speaks to all three of those things. So for myself, for example, my vision for the last, I think, even while I was an executive assistant, it was to help people figure out strategies to get from here to there and prevent them from dying with their God-given dreams and goals still in their back pocket. That part of it has been added on since I started Dreams Unleashed. And the importance of the vision statement, and the thing is, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're not taking this and you're carving it out in stone for all to see. This is just to be your true north. This is to be, your guiding principle to say, this is why I'm getting up in this season of my life. And so start out with 2 sentences. What is it that you desire? What is it that how you would like to imagine the world, or how would you like to see a problem solved? And maybe it has to even do with your family. What is your vision for your family? And just start there and create it. Don't try to be perfect. Just write it down on paper.
Write it down. Let's close with that, because I think a lot of us don't take the time to it's like we're afraid,
I know, yeah. Yeah,
afraid to
absolutely.
dream. Some of us are just afraid to dream, kind of like how you were afraid to dream about being a mom because of, your own life circumstance. And so much of it is being willing to be vulnerable and have that courage to kind of go inward to understand what might be stopping you from just writing it down.
Ooh, that's so good.
Well, Michelle, you're so awesome.
Well, Jessica, so are you.
You maybe want to just do a podcast all the time. Every time can be Michelle guest.
I love talking to you. It would just be girlfriend time.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us how we can find you.
Yeah. Okay. So website, you can get me at www.dreams-unleashed.com. And where the real party happens is over on Instagram, which I love. You'll find me sharing a whole lot and get transparent over at michelle.mckinney.
Awesome. So fun. Well, thanks again for your time today.
Thank you. This has been great.
See you on the other side.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jessica.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I always say that courage is contagious, and I have to say this conversation gave me a lot of courage. She had to go scared so many times when she made this decision to adopt, and yet her family didn't understand. She found community and was intentional to surround herself with people who were going to defend her dream. And it didn't mean that she excluded her family or excommunicated her family. She even said that those are the very ones who love her daughter the most now. But she was aware that when you put a dream out there, you need to find a community that's going to help fuel that dream so that your courage to keep going scared can continue to be contagious for you. I recently asked on Instagram for you to put some of your dreams out there. And I know it was really vulnerable for quite a few of you, because you said, I can't believe I'm saying this publicly. And now we're going to make those even a little more public, because I'm going to read a couple of those to you guys today. These are from Instagram, so all I have are your Instagram handles. So pardon me if some of your handles are a little cray. W. Lambert says, my dream is to raise my daughters to be strong and confident young ladies. I want them to dream bigger and help them achieve those dreams. ACSS74 says, my dream is finding the right property for retreat house. I want to host business, ministry, and organization retreats for education and team building and use it to bring people to the table so we can hear each other's stories. Elizabeth Bricknell said, I am dreaming about being a writer and a speaker. Andrea Beck Ledskow said, my dream is to have my own podcast. And after thinking about it for years, I'm doing it. It's called Taking the Middle Seat. And I do interviews with people to explore connection where we might not think that exists. Y'all should go check out that Instagram post all about dreams. We need each other if we're going to dream. We need to surround ourselves with people that believe in us so that we can borrow belief when we ourselves are a little shaky. Thanks so much for tuning in on today's episode of Going Scared. I hope that you just got a little bit of dose of courage to keep going wherever you might be moving through a fear right now. See you next week. Thanks so much for joining me on the Going Scared podcast today. If you like what you heard in this episode, be sure and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and leave a review so other people will join the conversation. If you'd like some behind the scenes looks at my life as a CEO, a mom, and a courage catalyzer, be sure to follow along on Facebook and on Instagram at Jessica Honegger, Honegger. Until next time, let's take each other by the hand and keep going scared.